All right, so I was reading this book called The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. If you haven't read it, I do recommend. And in the book, he challenges his readers to question the norms and the things we accept as artists in whatever art form we're making as rules, even though we don't actually need to follow them, but for some reason everyone does. And I figured out that in painting, we're all painting on canvases or wood boards just because that's like what people do. What if I took a canvas, ripped off the canvas and just kept the frame, wrapped it in some kind of plastic or lining, and got this? Looks super cool, right? Problem is, it has a bunch of give, doesn't look nice, kind of tacky. So, combine my favorite types of art, pour resin on top of that, get a hard layer on a see-through canvas with a border, paint on top of that resin, and then pour resin again. And this is what you get. This is Blackbeard, one of the goated pirates of all time. And I am really excited about this piece I made. Without spoiling or showing you guys all of the resin artworks that I've made up to this point, this is one that I thought was pretty simple, but perfectly showed what you can do with this. You can, depending on where you hang it, the background changes, and because of that, the entire painting and image changes. The vibe changes, the colors change, and there's just so many things you can do with this style. All right, so off camera, I have organized everything we need for the resin process. Start with sunglasses, because we're gonna use UV light, stay safe. Don't even know if those work. Obviously need gloves because you don't want resin on your fingers, very sticky. We're using UV resin for this because a number of reasons. UV resin dries way faster, so it's just easier and takes less time. But also, since it dries faster, it lets you build up a thicker layer of resin. As the other one takes 24 hours to dry, it spreads out really thin, and then you get a thin layer. And for this, since we're building a canvas and we're building a framework, we want it to be as thick as possible. UV resin. Next, obviously, we have just the framework that I already spoke about. See-through with a plastic lining, has a little bit of give, so you have to take a little bit of extra resin. And then we have other canvases that we're using to prop this up, because if this wasn't propped up, it would stick to the resin station that I made. Resin station is essentially just a desk with plastic on it, because resin will spill everywhere, and if you're not prepared for it, you will ruin your space. As I was mentioning, I came up with this idea while reading The Creative Act, and at first I was just so eager to try it and see if it would even work at all that it didn't dawn on me that although I came up with this idea on my own, maybe other artists are doing it as well. Once I did realize that, though, I still didn't research it because I didn't want my method and process to be influenced by theirs. Now that I have cemented a process that I like, I looked into it, and it's not really being done by other artists. Sure, some artists are painting see-through canvases, but those are almost exclusively store-bought picture frames and on glass, and to me that's just not the same. Part of what I love about this is the grooves in the background and my recently developed ability to control those grooves. If you don't believe me, look at the Blackbeard piece. Part of the reason I showed you that one is because it's grooveless in the background. It's beautiful with and without grooves. Really what I like is the ability to control what my art piece will look like in the end. All right, I finished painting the first layer of paint. After this, I have a layer of resin. Then we're gonna do another layer of paint to just make the scene a little busier, and then another layer of resin, and then the project is finished.
It's a brand new day. Wake up every morning and say, it's a brand new day. Take a good day, make it great, okay? 'Cause if you got some lemons, make some lemonade. Yeah, chase those clouds away. It's a brand new day.
All right, so let me catch you guys up on what we've done to this point. The painting is completely finished, and we've done 3 of the 4 resin layers. Let me show you. I think it's absolutely beautiful, if I do say so myself, but we have one more layer of resin to apply, and the reason we have one more layer of resin to apply is because we're using 2 different types of resin. There's this UV resin, which dries really fast, super practical, slightly cheaper, and much better for molding and building up layers. While then we also have this art resin, and the art resin is harder to use, takes longer to cure. I think it's more expensive, but the finish of the art resin just looks so much cleaner, and more like a final piece of artwork with way fewer imperfections than the UV resin has. So we always want to do a final coat of art resin, and then the project is complete. Let's get after it. Let's finish this, man. Love it. Good morning, y'all. Start of day 3. Final day, obviously. The project 99% finished, and whoo, what a beautiful morning it is. The resin looks great, but before I show you guys the final shots, there's a few imperfections I gotta clear up using a knife on the back of the resin piece, not on the front. So not something you would ever notice. Let's do that real quick, and then I'll show you guys the final shots.
Hey.